All right, this video is brought to you by one of our over 100 designs in the store, straight out of Excuses. If you want to support this channel and support these kind of videos, just go over to the store. The link's in the description and grab one, because this video, almost guaranteed, will be demonetized by The Daily Show. There's a couple of shows on Fox News, Joe Rogan podcast, also MSNBC, and some on CBS that will actually demonetize channels even for using small clips. Now, I will be interrupting. Hopefully it's going to be a benefit and not a detriment to this. But one thing we got to understand about what Jon Stewart does here, and not taking anything away from Jon Stewart, he's very smart and he's very funny. But he's smart enough to understand that the political divide of the left versus right paradigm, dog and pony show, is destroying this country. And one of the fundamental things that it destroys is our rights. So you'll be seeing me bring this banner up, "shall not be infringed," a couple of times during the course of this video, because "shall not be infringed" is not just something codified in the Second Amendment, which is in the Bill of Rights, which is in the Constitution, which lays under glass in the National Archives in Washington's District of Criminals. It is a universal principle. I don't have the right to infringe on your right to keep and bear arms. Therefore, that right, that unalienable right that nobody gave you and that nobody can legitimately take from you, shall not be infringed. But hear what Jon Stewart says as he plays the left versus right political nonsense.
Now, all of this, by the way, is not to say that gun crime does not exist. Of course it does.
So he starts off with the euphemism gun crime or gun violence, when there can be no such thing. There's no inanimate object violence. And I know I keep saying this, but hopefully other people will keep saying this and keep on saying this so that we can shove the nonsense back into their faces. This euphemistic nonsense that seeks to disarm critical thinkers into believing that there's something inherently wrong with certain kinds of weapons when that's not true. And then what these lobbyists and these politicians do when they make these laws that vilify inanimate objects like the AR-15, the AK-47, high-capacity magazines, what it does is it puts their foot in the door for taking away other guns that they will eventually say, well, that's too dangerous too. Because if you think long rifles are dangerous, by the way, back in 2016, the deaths caused by people using long rifles, not the long rifles themselves, but the people using long rifles, was 323 for all long rifles put together. And in that same year of 2016, over 7,200 people died because some evil person decided to use a handgun. So if you want to take logic into consideration and you want to give people the benefit of the doubt and the reason they're creating these anti-assault weapons laws or assault weapons bans, the reason they're creating this is because they want to create a safer environment for Americans. Well, that doesn't make any sense. Why start with the long rifle that only was responsible for being used in 323 deaths when handguns were used in over 7,200. Maybe even the number was 92 or 9,400, but it was way higher than all long rifles put together. The answer is no. They want to take it all away. They just want to vilify this one right now so they can lead you into something deeper, which is total gun confiscation. Because we've seen politicians and political pundits on fake stream media say, hey, wouldn't it be nice if we had the same kind of gun laws that they implemented in Australia? So he starts off with a euphemism right off the bat, which leads people down the wrong path and the wrong trail and the wrong line of thinking.
And some cities are worse than others. But here's the thing, and I say this.
Here's the thing is, here's the deal. The last thing you want, it's like, let me set the record. I'm here to set the record straight. I'm here to make a deal with you. It's like, no, we don't make deals with terrorists. We don't make deals with people who back or support terrorists or terrorism. And that seems to be what's happening in this political arena, where people pick up the political football and try to politicize every single thing as a justification to take away your rights, which, by the way, in this case, shall not be infringed.
With all due respect, the balls of these right-wing motherfuckers.
And that's exactly what they are. They are right-wing MRFers. Just like on the other side, it's left-wing MRFers. Why? Because they're playing for the same team owners. If you just ask representatives, past, present, and future, representatives of the Federal Reserve, hey, who's actually in control? Like Alan Greenspan said, hey, it doesn't really matter what the relationship is between a Federal Reserve president and the president of the United States. As long as they do what we say, legislative, judicial, executive branch, what the relationships are, well, frankly, it doesn't matter.
Well, first of all, the Federal Reserve is an independent agency, and that means basically that there is no other agency of government which can overrule actions that we take. So long as that is in place and there is no evidence that the administration or the Congress or anybody else is requesting that we do things other than what we think is the appropriate thing, then what the relationships are don't frankly matter.
Talking about how there's too much gun crime and chaos in our democratic cities, when Republicans are the ones who've enabled the flood of illegal weaponry into our cities in the first place.
Illegal weaponry. Can there be any such thing as illegal anything? Illegal drugs, illegal alcohol, illegal weaponry, illegal or illicit relationships. Does the government have any standing? What is the government? Are we going to say that you and I can determine what is legal or illegal? Isn't it a construct of belief what legality is or illegality? Does legality always mean morality? Does illegality always equal immorality? People like Jon Stewart are always leading other people who can't critically think down a road that is not good, away from morality and toward immorality, toward asking the government to exact violence on peaceful people who haven't done anything wrong. And if they keep on saying it long enough and aggressive enough, a lot of people start listening, and then they go out into society and start parroting the same thing.
93% of the illegal guns used in crimes in New York City aren't from here. They, like theater majors, have come here to make a name for themselves. The guns come from states like Florida and Georgia and South Carolina, where the gun laws are lax. And trust me.
So what's the answer to that? Abolish all gun laws. Tell New Yorkers, hey, you want to defend yourselves? Go ahead. We got a PSA for you criminals out there. You come to our city, our people are armed. You better be careful about that door you break into. You better be careful about that shop owner that you try to rob. It's probably going to cost you your life. And you may come into that falafel shop with criminal intent, but you're going out in a body bag.
Florida's not sending us their best guns. They're bringing guns for drugs and crime and rapists, and some, I assume, are good guns.
He's conflating humanity with that which is inanimate. They're not bringing us their best guns. They're bringing us their bad guns. Listen to what he says again.
Florida's not sending us their best guns. They're bringing guns for drugs and crime and rapists, and some, I assume, are good guns.
And, you know, a lot of people would look at this and go, no, he doesn't mean what you're saying he's meaning. He's being hyperbolic. He's using metaphors. He's using symbolism to try to convey his message. No, they are intentionally watering down the meanings of words. They're intentionally using euphemisms to divert from what's really going on. And they're trying to use that to trample on your right that's not supposed to be infringed upon. Period. That's what they're doing. And corporate media is being used by the owners of corporate media to convey a message and to hammer out a narrative, and everybody else is just supposed to go along with it. And a lot of people do. That's the startling thing. A lot of people listen to Jon Stewart and people like him, and listen to people like Fox News on the left, the right. So they listen to Jon Stewart on the left. They listen to the Young Turks on the left, Brian Tyler Cohen on the left. They listen to Tommy Lahren on the right. They listen to Jesse Waters on the right, Fox News on the right. And then they formulate these opinions. And what ends up happening is it's a political football that separates the country into teams, Team Red versus Team Blue. And now we're fighting among ourselves. And that's exactly how the owners of this country and these corporations want it to be. They want it to play out exactly like that. They want me to be your enemy and you to be mine.
And try as we might to put up some border controls to stem this invasion, this flood of literally undocumented weapons, Republicans fight every attempt.
Undocumented weapons. A documented weapon or a registered weapon is the first step to confiscation. You've heard it. Registration is a step to confiscation. We know that from history. And if you don't learn from history, Jon Stewart, you're doomed to repeat it. And I highly doubt that Jon Stewart is unaware of the atrocities of human history.
To bring some kind of order and even pass laws to increase the chaos.
Listen to him. Listen to him on some of these laws.
Look at all the laws and things that they've done. In 2005, they passed a law that effectively protects gun dealers and the gun manufacturers from being held liable for where their guns end up.
If you create a product and some madman, some psychopath, likely on big pharma medication, uses your product in the commission of a crime where it ends up harming somebody, why should you be held liable for what that person did with your product? It makes no sense. And this is another feeble justification that these people use to trample on a right that shall not be infringed. Let's go with another one.
They also try and make sure that terrorists and felons can still get guns.
I personally don't want bad people with guns, but the answer is to not limit good people from having guns. So I'm with one of the founding fathers that said, I prefer dangerous freedom over peaceful slavery. I would much rather have a terrorist or an ex-felon, the government called him a felon. I don't even know if they're a felon or not. There's tens of thousands of people in the prison system today that they're calling felons that actually didn't commit a felony, while the government who calls them felons are the felons themselves. This is all upside down world.
And just recently, they made sure that they can turn those guns into machine guns with bump stocks.
You're not turning a gun into a machine gun. Yes, it does have rapid fire characteristics with the bump stock. But what Jon Stewart right here is saying, again, when you ban an item, and in this case, it's a piece of plastic called a bump stock, when you ban an inanimate object, it only stands to reason that you criminalize the innocent person, the vast amount of innocent people who possess that inanimate object. So what Jon Stewart is actually calling for here is the criminalization of tens, perhaps hundreds of thousands of innocent Americans.
They make it impossible to study the effects of guns. They make it impossible to track
the effects of guns. Guns don't have an effect. The effect of guns? How about the psychological mindset of the madmen who chose to use a personal protection device to harm an innocent person? How about that? See, this is another attempt to cunningly animate an inanimate object to set it up as the straw man so that you can knock it down and get it out of the way and criminalize everybody who happens to possess this inanimate object that you don't want them to have.
the illegal guns. They fight fucking everything. You want to know how cynical it is? You remember this guy? This guy. Congressman Andrew Clyde from Georgia. He loves to go on TV and talk about crime in democratic cities.
Well, guess what? Politicians are liars. Wow. Imagine my shock when I found out that politicians are liars. This should not shock Jon Stewart that politicians on the left are liars and con men, and the politicians on the right are liars and con men. But he's going to milk this for everything it's worth because he has an audience for it. There's an appetite to listen to this kind of outrage propaganda. And that's what it is. Outrage propaganda that doesn't think its way through the problem. Hey, do you realize, Jon Stewart, when you're talking about banning something, you're literally talking about criminalizing innocent people to the point where the government views them as criminals. And if they possess the item you don't want them to have, John, guess who goes after them? The criminal organization, the premier criminal organization known as the U.S. government.
Republicans have always been the party of law and order. And what you have seen is the massive increases in crime have been primarily at Democrat-run cities.
Yeah, it turns out while he was complaining about the uptick in gun crimes in New York City, he himself was fighting added scrutiny on gun stores, like the two that he owns, that have been implicated in over 25 gun crimes since 2020.
Implicating a gun store owner for crimes that have been committed by psychopaths, likely again on big pharma medication, using inanimate objects to harm innocent people who haven't done anything wrong. And they're going to implicate a gun store owner for that? Tell me how that is even close to being just. Tell me how you can't recognize that as highly unjust.
Why would they do this? There must be a reason, right? Because the right always tells us there's no coincidences. Right? Isn't that what we're told all the time? It's almost as though Republicans must have a secret plan for this, funded by their billionaires.
Well, I mean, the plan's not that secret anymore. Are there conspiracies? Obviously, there are. Even the U.S. government recognizes it. There are conspiracies against rights. There are conspiracies against human life. There are conspiracies against people who don't fall in line, who don't parrot the narrative. It's called 18 U.S.C. 242, conspiracy against rights. And there's a stiff penalty for conspiracy against rights. And this is what Jon Stewart is buying into. He's buying into the conspiracy against rights. Isn't it just a fact that there are conspiracies? What's a conspiracy? It's two or more people who are making a nefarious plan against a third party. That's all a conspiracy is. Are you going to tell me those don't exist? You know, people are like, it's conspiracy theory. It's a fact that there are conspiracies. And he buys into it and he foments it and he adds fuel to the fire of the incessant propaganda.
To flood our cities with illegal, undocumented guns.
Illegal, undocumented guns. That means Jon Stewart, I'm assuming he's implying that he wants legal, documented, registered guns. If you're going to own a gun, Jon Stewart wants them registered. Who's going to do the registering? The government. Does Jon Stewart, is he going to sit there and tell you that he trusts government? He'd be a fool to say he trusts government. So if you don't trust government, who do you want to regulate the guns? If you want gun control, but you don't trust government, who do you want controlling the guns? Oh, you want that entity that you don't trust regulating and controlling guns? That doesn't make any sense.
Pouring them over our state borders in the hopes of killing off reliable Democratic voters. The great displacement theory.
What is he saying about the mass of humanity? You know, most people out there, thankfully, most people out there don't want to hurt other people. They just want to live their lives. They want to train and teach their kids. They want to live in peace. And they want to make sure that they have their rights protected, including their right to keep and bear arms. Now, if you don't want arms, then you can give them up. But you have no right to infringe on somebody else's right to keep and bear arms. And you definitely don't have a right to vote for somebody who's going to keep your neighbors from bearing arms. You don't have the right to infringe on somebody's right to protect themselves with that whatever piece of personal protection equipment that they want. Whether you're talking about a bulletproof vest, whether you're talking about militarized clothing and helmets or vehicles, or whether you're talking about an AR-15, AK-47, or high-capacity magazine, or a Glock 22.
That is obviously what's happening, and no honest person would think otherwise.
I just don't view Jon Stewart as being honest, because I feel like If you are incentivized and if your paycheck comes from promoting dishonesty and supporting dishonesty, then it's not likely that you'll come to the altar of truth. If a man's paycheck is dependent on him being dishonest, what do you think the likelihood of him ever being honest is?
So there's only one real solution. Unfortunately, for the borders of Florida, Georgia, and South Carolina, we have to, what's the word?
Yeah, so he's saying, oh, we want that wall built? Yeah, here's why we want that built, because we don't want those illegal, unregistered guns coming across the border into New York to off a bunch of Democratic voters. It's just a bunch of nonsense. Hey, if you enjoyed these commentary videos, maybe you'll like some of my others. I really appreciate you guys helping get this one over 3.5 million views. There's a lot of them over here. You got this one already over 3 million views in 8 months, 2.4 million. So I really appreciate it. There might be a lot of videos on my channel that you haven't seen. If you haven't seen them already, take a look at them. It'll really help me with the algorithms. I'm trying to grow this channel out so we can get the word out and hopefully right this ship before it goes all the way down to the ocean. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell notification icon, give it a thumbs up, share it with everybody. You know, don't forget to subscribe to my email list or my website, highimpactflix.com. If you want to support the channel further, like I said, grab a hard-hitting conversation starting design, become a channel member, but more importantly, know what your rights are and know what the truth is. Truth is treason in the empire of lies. Truth is the new hate speech, and truth is the first casualty in any war. I appreciate you guys. Fight for your rights. If you don't fight for them, you will lose them. I will see you guys in the next video.